Hello and welcome to the NBA DFS on the RotoRadar podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer, joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, take some time away while I have to get out all these tweets for the podcast here in the next few moments.
Yeah, I am doing the same thing as we speak. Lots of places to broadcast. So it's Wednesday, November 29th. Feels crazy that we're almost at the end of November. We have December slate on Friday. We had an awesome NBA playoff atmosphere last night. Really good games all the way around. The Bucks finally got their revenge, even though it felt bittersweet not having Butler out there. Anyway, though, nailed a lot of calls yesterday. Had a lot of guys go off for insanely high scores. Glad the Şengün stuff worked out for us. So not too much to complain about. We've had 4 straight wins on DraftKings and lots of really, really high scores the last couple of days. And I don't think that's going to stop today. We have a lot of games, 7 to be exact, and got some teams that, I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts on this, but lots of teams that technically got eliminated from the in-season tournament, and not technically, they did get eliminated and they have to play tonight. So I'm curious on how that affects some teams, but other than that, it's a really solid Wednesday slate.
Yeah, definitely a solid Wednesday slate, kind of our sweet spot of 7 games. We've talked about it before. It's usually like 5 through 9 is usually where we get really enticed. You get above 9, you get a lot of variance. It gets a little bit too big. You get below 5, you just don't have enough plays in general. But 5 through 9 feels like a good sweet spot. I have 7 game slate, lots of loaded games. And I think the best part, while I might not agree with some of these spreads that they have, almost every spread is really close. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I agree with the Lakers -7. I think they should be bigger favorites than that. Don't know if I agree with the Orlando Magic -10. I think they should be bigger favorites than that. But everything else is right next to each other, and it should be a competitive day of basketball. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it. Let's get into it, man. If you're ready, I'm ready. We can break down what we do here and then get going.
Right. 2 7 p.m. window games, and they're both really, really intriguing. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Let's do it. How we run this show every day, go game by game, talk about our favorite DFS plays on FanDuel and DraftKings first to start off. Then we head over to PrizePicks and Underdog Fantasy, talk about some of the pick'em plays that we like over there. Let's get this thing kicked off with the first game of the slate, one that there's been a lot of chatter around already. I think a lot of people are already looking at this game and taking their calls on it. It's going to be the Washington Wizards facing off against the Orlando Magic. Currently, Magic biggest favorites of the day at -10. Over under is at 234. This Magic team playing really well to start out the season. I mean, they look like one of the best teams in the East right now with that defense that they've been running because it is shut down. The Wizards do not do not look like one of the best teams in the East right now. Game after game of really bad play. Ended up getting a big win against Detroit to break their losing streak, but winning against Detroit isn't much of a thing that you can be excited about. We'll talk about that in that next game with the Lakers, but let's talk about this Wizards side. It feels like it's relatively easy to just say stay away. It's a really tough matchup all the way around. There's not one guy that's going to get a good matchup outside of maybe Daniel Gafford against Goga Patadze, but I don't even think I would target that because I am a little bit worried about blowout run in this game. I think the Wizards could get ahead by a lot. And so how are you handling this Wizards side today when it comes to DFS?
There's not much that I really, really enjoy here. Orlando, I mean, the best thing about it, I guess the good thing that we can say about the Washington side is that it is pretty much just as an up and pace spot. It's hard to beat them. Obviously, only one team has a better pace record or pace factor than Washington does, but at least Orlando is running in the top 10, so that's not going to take away from them tremendously here. I think that there are really bad matchups all the way around. I think that Jalen Suggs will be able to handle anything Jordan Poole throws at them. I don't think necessarily like Jordan Poole shouldn't really be a huge factor here. I don't know. Maybe it's a Daniel Gafford situation where if we expect him to play a full allotment of minutes, maybe he can do something there too. But you start looking at everything Washington has, and you can cross a lot of stuff out.
Yeah, you certainly can. It is pretty easy to cross some of this stuff out on Washington. I think with Jordan Poole getting such a tough defender, and this Orlando team just does such a good job at shooting or shutting down the guard position. I have no interest in Poole. I have no interest in Tyus. I think Kuzma most likely gets that Paulo defense, which has been very good this year.
Yeah.
it's just hard to find someone you really like on Washington. Like I said, if there is one guy that I think you could consider, it probably would end up being Daniel Gafford. Looking over at the optimizer now, I already see it has his rebounds highlighted as an over. Again, it goes back to the conversation we had yesterday, right? While I am scared of this potentially being a blowout, there's also the chance that, Orlando Magic win by 11, 12 points. And
Right.
because of that, you see full playing time from both sides. So, taking that into consideration, I could get behind Gafford, but I think that's it.
Right. So I think that if this thing is hitting the total of 234.5 and it is staying within 10 points, that brings into the conversation of like, if you look at the rest of the games on the slate, maybe you can get by without Washington, but it is kind of hard to say that, you don't at least want something, right? And that's kind of the conversation we've been having. I don't know. I think I'm okay with Gafford, but then we're also going to say that there are a lot of really good center plays on today's slate. So
Yeah,
maybe you just don't find them on top cash games, but game stacks, I think that they're still in play on sites like Underdog and PrizePicks.
for sure. Let's talk about the other side because obviously, like when it all comes down to it, this Orlando Magic side is really interesting. If this game
Mm-hmm.
does stay relatively close, the Orlando Magic are going to be far and away one of the highest scoring fantasy point teams in the NBA today, just due to the fact that the Wizards aren't good on defense. Worst team in the NBA when it comes to DFS points or FanDuel points allowed. That belongs to this Wizards team overall positions. And then you look at how they fare against the point guard, how they fare against the center position, power forward position, not very good. Like small forward position, also not very good. There's a ton of plays here. I think it's just about narrowing down exactly which one you are going to feel comfortable with. That's going to be the hard conversation today because you can't play all of them. You got to choose someone. It does feel like there's a must play situation from this Orlando team. But in your opinion, who would that guy be?
I'm circling around three guys right now. And I think number one, you just have to mention the best player on the team, and Paulo Banchero. I think it's a fair price on FanDuel and DraftKings. Uh, I think that, obviously this is an up and pace spot. I think that also there's potential here to say that Orlando is a little bit pissed about how some of the in-season tournament stuff went. They were on the opposite side of the luck yesterday, where the Knicks and the Celtics were able to get in, and they were not. So that would have been a team, at least if I'm not mistaken, right? I think Orlando got eliminated.
Did they get eliminated? I don't know. I lost track
I'll look
yesterday.
at that, but again, like I think there's potential here to either um, sleep on that, or maybe they are actually in a spot where they are looking for some kind of some motivation here. So I don't know. I think either way, it's the best spot on the slate. They have the highest team total at 121. The next is 118 from the Lakers, and then it drops off a good chunk. So you got to be interested. I think Paulo is where you start that, and he's just not supposed to be in the 8K or 7K range on FanDuel. That's kind of where it comes down to. This coming off a strong game from Charlotte. And then the other two guys, and I'll have you share your thoughts on how we can rank these because that'll be important. But number two and number three for me are going to be Cole Anthony and Goga Batadze. I think Goga is probably a better play overall than Daniel Gafford on the other side. But I do think that you have to have at least interest in two of those three.
Yeah, who was your number one? Sorry, I was looking at
Paula.
in-season tournament stuff. Yeah, I can get behind Paulo. I feel like you need to include Franz in there as one of those guys that
Sure.
definitely deserves
Sure.
consideration. He's been just like ultra consistent. And like I think that's something that's super valuable, especially in today's NBA. He's going to factor into every stat category. He's going to get a good chunk of run where he's going to see mid 30 in his minutes if the game stays close. I like Franz. I think Paulo's just fine. I think number three for me would be Cole Anthony. That production he put up in that Charlotte game was massive, and I don't see why he couldn't do the same thing here. And then I think from there you can go to the Gogas of the world. You can go to Jalen Suggs. You can even consider guys like, I don't know, in blowout situations like Anthony Black's going to get a little bit more run. Wouldn't mind
Mm-hmm.
going that direction. Wagner is going to get a little bit more run. He's been a optimizer darling this year. It loves him almost every single day. I can tell you that that's the same case today as well. And I don't mind taking a chance on the Wagner stuff. Like even in GPPs, if you're expecting this to get a little bit blowout heavy, Wagner's most likely going to slide in there and have a pretty good role. So I like the Wagner spot too. I think, and that's Moritz Wagner, not Franz Wagner. Um, I think there's a lot of upside here. I think everyone's in play. I think you should be starting out with Paulo, but Franz is right there with him. I think Cole Anthony's right there with him. I think the real question is, especially if you're not running it back, like how many Orlando pieces can you have before you get uncomfortable here?
Considering it's Fultz and Wendell Carter, and we've also seen that play out for a while now, I think you probably are sitting in a sweet spot of 2. 3 feels a bit much. I think that maybe one of those guys could fall a little bit short, but I think you are playing 2 of them today at minimum. And by
I
the
like
way,
it.
Orlando is not in the in-season tournament, so maybe there's a little
Yeah.
bit of let's take it out on the Wizards kind of thing.
Poor punching bag of the Wizards.
Yeah.
Poor punching bag. All right. Anything else here? If not, let's move on to pick'em stuff and start talking about underdog and prize picks.
No, let's go ahead and move on. I'm going to start out by just saying that I'm not super interested in anything Wizards. If anything, I actually could get behind a shutdown or taking unders of certain guys, whether that be Poole or even like Tyus Jones with the tough guard defense going under the PRA there. That's kind of where I would start the conversation.
I think they're kind of baiting you into this assist number for Kuzma. He's hit it in each of his last 4 out of 5 games, but he was much more inconsistent with this assist number when you look back previously in the season. Add that to the really tough matchup. The Opto really likes his assists under today, so I can certainly get behind Kuzma assists under. Especially with Poole being fully back, and I expect him to take a little bit more over point guard responsibilities. I think that's it. I think, like you said, I think there's only unders here. The optimizer slightly likes Gafford over his rebounds, but it's not enough to say it's a clear play.
Yeah, again, the kind of just it's whatever. It's a very, very tough defense overall, and I just don't think we need to necessarily. You don't have to play anything on Washington.
Yeah.
Is there a
What do you,
situation where he's not on the injury report? Could we see a scenario where maybe they take a step back with Jordan Poole?
What do you mean take a step back, out of
I
the
mean, he played
lineup?
25 minutes against Detroit. He's coming off the ankle still. I mean, if he's a late scratch, would you say that you have to roster Washington?
Um, yeah, probably. That's such a big usage piece to lose in your offense. I feel like someone has to end up being the guy there. I don't know who it would be because I don't feel necessarily comfortable with playing Tyus. Yeah, I'm not really sure who I would end up going to if we got the news that Poole was out, but it
Yeah.
would probably be a
Hopefully, we don't have
spot
to go
where,
through that.
yeah, hopefully we don't. Let's talk about the other side where the Opto likes a lot of plays on this Orlando side very clearly. There's too many good matchups and too much good pace up stuff to not like this spot. Really like Cole Anthony over rebounds, likes Goga over rebounds, likes Wagner over rebounds. There's a ton of plays here that are over 40 value. So what do you like here? And then I'll give some other stuff that I like from this game.
Yeah, I think the Paulo Banchero play is one of the more solid ones of the day. Now, you're not going to get much meat on the bone here, but he has cleared 22 and a half points in 5 straight games. And you look at some of those matchups, and it makes a lot of sense as to why. This is obviously the best spot that they've had. I would say Charlotte is pretty equal, but you still get an up and pace spot here with the highest team total and their leading scorer in Paulo. So, yeah, 22 and a half points is where I would start off there. And going from there, I am slightly interested in what Goga Batadze brings to the table. Can definitely get on board with points or rebounds there. Maybe both. 9.5 points feels attainable. I don't know, just kind of you're looking for just the pace up spot for these guys, and I think that maybe rebounds at 7.5 also makes a lot of sense if Washington ends up taking a lot of threes and missing a lot of them.
Just all depends on if they end up keeping him in with blowout run. I know that's the problem that the
Agreed.
optimizer ran into
I
against
agree.
Charlotte was the fact that Goga didn't end up closing out, and because of that, he didn't hit his 7.5 number, which is what it was at last time. The optimizer really liked the number. It's just he didn't end up getting the full run, so something that you got to keep an eye out for. Anything else here in this game? If not, we can move on to the next one.
The last thing that would influence any decisions here would just be to ask yourself the question, who on Orlando has a solid role in regulation, but also can be a beneficiary in blowout time. I think that there's two people there. It's probably Mo Wagner and Anthony Black, right?
Yeah, I guess on the Anthony Black stuff, I don't know. He doesn't play enough minutes in like normal situations
That's
to
true.
say
Jonathan
like he's going
Isaac's
to
also
contribute
coming
both
back
ways.
too, probably.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Anything else here?
No.
All right. Next game up is going to be the Lakers and the Pistons facing off against each other. Like I mentioned earlier, Lakers 7-point favorites over under 229.5. Look, I know this is like a 7-point favorite, and like it doesn't really make sense to me. Pistons have lost in what did I gave you this stat yesterday? Like over the last 41 games, they've lost 37 of them. It's been an abysmal run for this Pistons team.
Mm-hmm.
This Lakers team comes into town. They're coming off of that 76ers loss, which was just really bad overall. Um, I still wouldn't count out the fact that they might sit LeBron here. He's still questionable with that calf. I know he just plays through these routinely. I'm a little bit worried that with it being a 7-point favorite, it feels like it should be a lot bigger with how this Lakers team has played recently. And it feels like it's just a little bit fishy. So I wouldn't be shocked if LeBron ended up sitting. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on this Lakers team as a whole?
It felt fishy, but we also remember that, we talked about this on the show yesterday. The Milwaukee line felt fishy too. And that game went down to the wire as possible. Now, different circumstances. The Lakers, maybe they do have to sit one of their guys because, you know, uh, they have better things to look forward to. No offense to Detroit, but there's not, I don't know. The Lakers coming into town to play Detroit is probably one of the Detroit highlights of the season, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of where things are at. I would tend to lean on saying one of these guys probably doesn't play. But again, thankfully we have this at 7 o'clock, and normally we don't get Lakers news at 7 o'clock, so that's great. From there, if both guys are in, the big guys, I find it hard to say which one's the better play. I think they're both really good, and the easiest thing that would have to happen here is if one sits, you just play the other guy and you run from there. And then you got to have the conversation of if LeBron or AD sit, who's in the best spot after that. And I think I would lean on saying, depending on what happens with Cam Reddish, then you're probably rostering D'Angelo Russell at 6,300.
Yeah, D'Angelo Russell would be solid. Austin Reeves would be solid. I think there's a ton of guys that could fall in line after you find out that news. I will say, like, regardless of anyone sitting in this game, I really like AD. Pistons are the worst team in the league
Mm-hmm.
against the center position. He needs to have a little bit of a prove it game here. You see in good matchups, like he's continually like being really dominant. It's when he gets these bad matchups that he's struggling. I think playing AD here, if it is truly a 7-point spread with both of these guys in,
Yeah.
if it's a competitive game, AD could very well go for 70 today. So I like the Davis spot quite a bit as one of the pay up guys potentially today.
Yeah. Also, pretty similar. Like there's a group of like 10 teams that are around 102 possessions. Detroit on the high end, the Lakers are on the lower end. They're only 0.6 possessions away from each other. It's not really a pace up spot necessarily, but the rankings will show you it is. I I am interested in something from the Lakers, and I think having the second overall team total here is something where you really have to try to find a way to roster it, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable. So maybe in that case, would you? This is a tough thing to get through with the second game on the slate, but I would say I would lean playing a Lakers superstar instead of playing a third Magic player. Are you catching my drift there a little bit?
I think
Like
if you're
instead
saying
of
like
playing
that
three
third,
Magic guys, I think that you should play a Lakers guy and two Magic at this point.
yeah, I can get behind that. It's just price tag wise, like how does it work out?
Sure.
How does it figure into everything? Um, But yeah, I certainly don't mind the take. I think it is solid. Anything else on this Lakers team? I think it's pretty easy. I think you play AD if you get news. I will not play. I think you consider AD a play if we get the news that that both superstars are playing. I think if one of them sits out, you're definitely playing the other one. And I think you add D'Angelo Russell or Austin Reeves to that mix too, and you call it a day playing two Lakers.
Yeah, I have one more hypothetical here. Depending on Cam Reddish, and not even depending, but Rui Hachimura we know is already out. So if Anthony Davis is the guy that is ruled out, I think that Christian Wood becomes one of the best plays on the slate, and you get the ultimate revenge narrative in Detroit.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that. I love it. He's been an animal recently. He's been playing so well when I've watched these games. So I could certainly get behind the Christian Wood spot. Let's talk about Detroit. Anything interest you here? I'm kind of off of this. I don't think when they're getting to this spot where they're getting pretty close to fully healthy, this team gets a whole hell of a lot less interesting.
I was confused on the Jaden Ivey stuff the other day. Knew that he's had a really solid string of games the last couple, but I'm not going to force it here. Maybe that was just against the Washington matchup with a good price, but I'm out on this side. The only thing that would influence me here would be the conversation of if one of the superstars sit for the Lakers, then you can play Jalen Duren because he would be able to probably eat Christian Wood alive defensively.
Yeah, I could get behind that. All right. Let's talk about some pick'em stuff if you're ready to move on to that conversation.
Yeah, that's also kind of a pretty dry conversation because I'll make it pretty clear. I don't think you should be playing any Pacers here.
You say dry. Opta says differently. Isaiah Stewart, over rebounds and
Uh,
assists and over rebounds. Two plays that are over 40 value. Underdog has
because it's
rebounds and
low.
assists. Yeah, Underdog has rebounds and assists at 7.5. That's a really low number. And PrizePicks has it at 8. So wouldn't be shocked if that got bumped if you wanted to take it early to
Yeah.
secure that value, go ahead. I also pulled these lines like right before we went live, so it's been 30 minutes now. They could have already switched it over to 8 by now. But if it's still at 7.5, it's projected a good value, especially compared to what PrizePicks put out there. So Isaiah Stewart rebounds and assist would be a solid value pick. Other than that, I really can't get behind much here.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going with the hypothetical of this game staying close, I think Stewart's got a really good shot at clearing rebounds. That's fine. 6.5 is
Yeah,
fine.
for sure. All right. I think regardless, like I'd be interested in an Anthony Davis number if it's low enough. Um, Looking for a fantasy point number. I think that's what you really want here. Yeah, 51.5. I'd be down. I'm totally willing to take that number at 51.5 for his fantasy score. What about you?
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind it. I think that the rebound numbers are in the right spot at 12.5. That's probably where it should be. We've just seen him be a little bit, like you said, in matchups where it's been tougher, he's struggled on the offensive end of things. And when he's able to get in matchups where he can destroy, he's clearing these things way over. So instead of taking risks on individual stuff, probably your best bet's getting the overall fantasy output in this situation.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else in this game? If not, let's move on to the next one.
I could be on board the LeBron James assist train today, potentially 6.5 assists. He might take a back seat in points today and be in the team's offensive juggernaut there. I think that probably leans on Davis. Anything that you want to bring up in terms of like the Lakers? Not really. Like again, this points back to the last point we'll make here is just I would say that since they were able to get the in-season tournament seed that they wanted, maybe they are in a spot where they can rest some guys for the next couple of games.
Yeah, definitely. There's a good chance of it. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the case. All right, let's move on to this next game, Jared. Talk about the Suns facing off against the Raptors here. Currently, Suns are 3-point favorites in this game. Over under set at 226.5. Pretty high total for a Raptors game. But let's talk about the Suns team first. Really tough matchups all the way around, right? Devin Booker is going to get OG. Most likely, if Kevin Durant does end up playing, which I'm kind of assuming he does just because of where the spread is at and everything, then Scotty Barnes is going to get that Kevin Durant matchup. It might be all signs lead to Nurk here in a really good spot where we have consistently attacked centers against
Yep.
Jakob Pertl, and it continues to work really, really well. What do we think about Nurkic here, and do we think that he can continue the dominance that we've seen from centers against this poor Toronto team?
Yeah, man. I know that the price feels like sort of an uncomfortable range a little bit compared to the guys in Washington, Orlando, but it's a really good spot. I think that we've just funneled this routinely here, and this is kind of just where the top plays conversation just gets you. So I think that this is a fine play. I'd probably prefer it on DraftKings where you have other options constructurally, and he also does get the double double bonus if he hits that at 6,700. So I think he's a very good play on DraftKings and on FanDuel. we just had this conversation of like it's been a really tough week of trying to find choosing your favorite center, and so I don't
Hmm.
think you can go wrong with that. And I think that he is just fine there too.
Yeah, really like Nurk. Really like the upside here. I think that all the boxes check out, especially with with OG getting Devin Booker, Scotty getting Kevin Durant. Like they're matchup wise, it's going to come down to can Nurk do some damage to this team, and I think most likely he can. So I like the Nurk spot. Anything else you like? I think we're expecting Grayson Allen to sit. He didn't go through practice yesterday, so if Grayson Allen does end up sitting, we saw Eric Gordon have a huge performance against New York. We saw, a whole bunch of other guys get involved. I think Bates Diop ended up getting pretty involved in things. Do you have anyone that you really like here for Phoenix outside of Nurk?
Uh, this is kind of again another hypothetical thing. So if KD plays, then I'm off the Bates Diop stuff. But if and then I would just say Eric Gordon's probably your next best guy. And then I would say if KD is in, then it's just Gordon for me, or maybe just Nurk, and that's it.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Toronto, what do we like here? Because it does feel like a spot where maybe you could take advantage of this Suns defense not being, they're definitely not very good. They're all right. I just don't think they're necessarily the best. They struggle against the power forward position. I think that would lead to a pretty good Scotty play. Um, Anything else that you like here, though, outside of Scotty?
I like Scotty and Siakam here. Both of them are strong. I think Siakam, I worry about him a little bit because we know how streaky he is. And if he gets on this, now he's gone 3 straight games of really good minutes, but not as great peripherals. That worries me a little bit. The price tag is pretty intriguing, but yeah, it's either one of Scotty or Siakam here. And I think that you would lean as the cash play with Scotty and the tournament play with Siakam here.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind the Siakam play. Definitely don't mind going that route. Anything else in this game? If not, let's move on to pick'em stuff.
No, I think we can move on to pick him.
All right, let's move on to pick'em. I am getting the board up for Phoenix and for Toronto. In the meantime, tell me what you like from this Phoenix team.
Yeah, if we're really bullish on Nurk before Kevin Durant news comes out, it's a really nice time to jump on the 11 points uh, selection there. I think also he is in the range, and Underdog has this as well, of getting the double double scorcher. So you can go 20 and a half points rebounds. I think 11 points by itself is just fine. That's where I would lean first, but I think you can take advantage of some of this stuff before Kevin Durant news comes out because that will obviously bring Nurkic's stuff way up.
Yeah, for sure. I can get behind that. Not much value on the board for this game. It likes Scotty under 1.5 3 pointers made. I'd have to dive a little bit deeper into the play to see exactly why, but um, it's really the only one that's even a slight lean, and it is pretty slight. So I don't think there's anything that really jumps off on the optimizer. Um, for me personally, it's kind of the stuff that we already talked about, like Nurk numbers, wherever you can get them. I haven't seen them yet, but let's go take a look here for Nurkic. Um, 20 points and rebounds is solid. I would probably wait for a fantasy point number to come out just because he has been blocking a lot recently. So get those blocks in there as well. And I think you can feel pretty solid about that.
Yeah, for sure. Scotty Barnes has a double double in 3 of the last 4 games, and in the one that he didn't, he got pretty close against Cleveland. So I think that the that stuff is okay as well. Um,
The
but other
Scorcher,
than
isn't
that,
it?
I'm not really chomping at it. What?
It's a Scorcher, the double double. I thought I saw
It
that on
is.
Twitter earlier.
It is.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely not a bad Scorcher. I think it's actually pretty solid odds. All right. Anything else here, Jared? If not, let's move on to a matchup. I feel like we've talked about like 5 times already this season, but this will be the third time we've talked about it.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, it is. I remember because I've highlighted plays both times, and I think both times, I think one time it was super successful, one time it wasn't. This game that we keep alluding to, though, is the Jazz facing off against the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are 4.5 point favorites, over unders at 223.5. The Utah Jazz are not expected to have Lauri Markkanen today, as he is not traveling with the team on this road trip.
Yeah.
Spicy news there. Jordan Clarkson also questionable in this one. Kelly Olynyk questionable in this one too. So we'll see what they look like once we get a little bit closer to lock. But hypothetically, how do you handle this Utah Jazz situation if Clarkson is going to be out in this one?
Yeah, I think I saw a report that said he was at shoot around. Doesn't really say how actively he participated there. So we'll have to kind of just wait and see. And you got to plan for this spot, even though it is 8 p.m. Eastern. So you have to kind of just, because Utah could end up being one of the better value plays. This whole game has a lot of value because of the injuries on both sides. And we also have Chris Dunn taking a personal day. So that is a spot where I think that really hinges on the Keontae George stuff. If Jordan Clarkson's out, obviously you would play George there, and then you can kind of go down the list and see what better options are on the board. If Clarkson's in, I actually think the spot's pretty solid too. So I think as long as Marcus Smart's out, you should be able to attack the guards on Utah.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I really like Keontae George. I think without Clarkson, without Laurie, he's taken a little bit of a revised look on his game and said, okay, I need to be a little bit more aggressive with the scoring instead of being so pass heavy. Shout out to the optimizer. It was here first when it said like start taking the under on Keontae George's assists, and it's been working out pretty well. It has it listed again as a lean. I definitely don't mind it. But I like Keontae George overall. It's just like a very good play today. I think that he has a lot of upside if Clarkson is out. And even if Clarkson's in, like we're still seeing him perform really well. So I like
Mhm.
Keontae George regardless of the situation there. Um, what else do you like from this team, if anything? I think for me, I'm really not interested in the big men. Jaren Jackson's been a pretty solid defender this year. They've had pretty good interior defense overall. So I don't feel like I'm biting at the bit to get like Jaren Jackson or anyone else in the or sorry, get John Collins or Walker Kessler or anyone else in the interior.
No, Kessler has had his minutes go up a little bit. Now I'd love to see. I probably wait this one out a little bit more. If you're, I don't think we can call Walker Kessler a top play in cash games just because there's a little bit of uncertainty here with his minutes. If they trend up and you want to get to this early on the tournament side of things, if you're a tournament player, then you can feel okay playing him at 5,900 on both sites. You have a double upside, which would be a bonus on DraftKings. You have blocks and steals upside, which would be a bonus on FanDuel. So Walker Kessler could be one of the better tournament centers on the slate. It's just, can you trust the minutes? And I don't think you can.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I don't think you can trust those minutes. Um, if Kelly Olynyk gets ruled out, might be a little bit different of a scenario where you can get a
Yes.
little bit more trustworthy in those minutes.
Yes.
Definitely feel a little bit more solid about it. All right. Anything else on this Utah side? If not, let's talk about Memphis a little bit here.
Yeah, I guess the last thing here is how much do you bake in them giving Omar Yurtseven 26 and 22 minutes against New Orleans?
Think he'll continue to get minutes. I think that he's able to play a little bit of power forward as well. We've seen him play next to Kessler, so like just
Yeah,
because Yurt 7 continues to get minutes does not mean Kessler's minutes are going to be downgraded completely.
that's fair.
All right, let's talk about this Memphis side. We've seen, this is a really good matchup against Utah. It's going to be a little bit pace up. I think there has to be some things that you're considering here. Desmond Bain being one of the top ones. I touted him in the first time he faced off against Utah, and he played like shit. He played awful. Then I
Mhm.
touted him again in the second time they played Utah, and he went bananas at 59 FanDuel points in that matchup. Which Desmond Bain are we getting today, Jared?
I think we get the Bane that is going to be able to make a lot of threes. So
Hopefully.
I that's where I lean today, and we've played this mini stack on either side. Most of the time, Lowry has been the beneficiary of the other side, but yeah, I think that Bane is just fine in this spot, and still has the same situation as he's had the last couple weeks here.
Yeah, for sure. I really like the spot for Bane. I really like the spot for Triple J. I think the matchup is good. Last time he played against this team, I think I heard that he got ejected from someone in chat. So something to keep in mind. Should come in with a little bit more fire in this one. I like Triple J. I like Desmond Bain. I think even a guy like Bismack is potentially an option here at the center position if you're looking to go a little bit cheaper at the position. Optimizer really likes him today. Makes sense with like the matchup and everything. It's very good. And last time he faced off against Utah, he had his second highest FanDuel point total of the season at 36. So I can get behind Bismack.
You are correct. Jaren Jackson got ejected as well as the coach on that November 11th game or 10th or whatever it was. That was he only played part of the third quarter, so there's definitely parts of that I think could get skewed. Definitely think that he's okay, and yeah, I don't mind the Biombo spot. It feels like you're getting a bit of a discount after that's come down a little bit. I know that he's had. It does seem like things flip flop a little bit, but he is in a solid spot as well.
For sure. All right. Anything else here, Jared? If not, let's talk about pick'em stuff.
Um, we didn't really like go out and say it, but I think we can. I mean, I think Desmond Bain is pretty much a borderline cash game play, like a must
Yeah,
territory.
borderline must play. I think is close. I think he's definitely a cash game play without a doubt. It's about, I think he's getting pretty close to a lock and load, knowing the price tag that he's currently
Mm-hmm.
at 8,300 when he should be closer to a 9K player, and knowing the fact that this is a pretty elite matchup overall. I really like the Desmond Bain spot for sure.
Plus,
Pick
you need one guy from this Memphis team as a 4-point favorite with all the Utah injuries.
For sure, definitely. All right, let's talk about Memphis here in the pick'em conversation. I mentioned it. Optimizer really likes Bismack numbers, likes him over 7.5 points, which is up on Underdog. On PrizePicks, they have it at 8. Again, secure the value while you can, in my opinion, if it's still up there. Also, really likes
Uh,
Jaren Jackson. No, it's at 8. Dang.
mm-hmm.
Wish I talked about it sooner. That is the top, or it was the top play at 57 value. Now it's at 47 if it's at 8, just based on like the difference and everything. So a little bit worse, but still a play that the optimizer recommends. Jaren Jackson over threes, 3-pointers made is up there. He has not converted this either time he has faced off against Utah, but he has been consistent in shooting the three ball, which I think is the more important point. He shot the ball 8 times the first time he faced off against Utah, only made one of them. That's not going to happen many times. I think most of the time when you see Jaren Jackson shoot 8 3 balls, he's going to make 2 of them. So I really like the Triple J 3-pointers made. Then, like I mentioned, like there's a Keontae George number and stuff, but not much else there. What else do you like from this Memphis team? And do Bain numbers feel attainable for the spot that he's in?
You're relying on a lot to go correctly, which I think that they will, but 25 points feels pretty accurate. I know he's gone through a couple of floor games recently, but at the same time, I think this is a really strong roll. I would probably, if I don't have it here, and I guess I would just kind of be relying on points alone. But if there were a number of 3-point attempts made, then I would be all over that. I don't have it here, but like I said, 25 points feels like it should be right where it is. So I'll probably just pass and hopefully you get a little bit more conviction in a few hours when Underdog puts up his fantasy score. What's it on PrizePicks, the Bane one?
41 and a half.
Yeah, if so, it feels like you are getting a bit more conviction on the FanDuel price. So I don't know. I think it's right where it should be. You're kind of just
Yeah.
betting. You're trying to double dip a little bit across sites if you were to do that. Memphis though, last play, kind of interested in Derrick Rose points today. 10.5 is where it sits. He's been able to clear that pretty consistently in spots that he's playing 20 minutes. I think it's okay.
Yeah, definitely okay. Definitely solid. Anything else here for pick'em stuff? If not, let's move on to the next game.
Let's move on to the next game. I don't think there's only 2 players up on Underdog, and we've already kind of talked about them for Utah. So
For sure. All right. Next game up is going to be the 76ers taking on the Pelicans here. Currently, 76ers are 2.5 point favorites. Over under is at 230.5. Let's talk about the 76ers team first. Good spot that they walk into against this Pelicans team. It feels like they should be bigger favorites, but maybe
mhm.
I'm wrong. I don't know. Let's talk about who do you like here, because it does feel like a spot that Embiid could really dominate overall.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not a huge fan of Joker coming off of the back injury against Houston in a really, really slow paced game. We'll talk about that. I know he just dominated the Rockets, and I really hope we don't have to talk about that too much in the next game. But Embiid, man, he just has to find himself on a slate where there's no Joker play because he is a phenomenal tournament play, just individual and straight up play. I think that they will have no choice. The Pelicans won't to they will have to play Jonas Valanciunas as much as possible, and if that's the case, Embiid has all the makings to score 50 real life points and put up some monster numbers.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely can get behind the Embiid spot. I don't know if necessarily I want to lock it in as like a great cash game play, but I do think it's a
Right.
good play overall. Outside of that, like Maxey gets a pretty bad matchup against this Pelicans team. I don't know. We'll see what CJ looks like coming off of the injury, but like I would probably just end up staying away from the rest of the 76ers team. Is Kelly Oubre? No, he's not back. He's
He's
coming back
expected
soon
to
though.
potentially come back Friday, and that's
Okay.
potential. So
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that when we get there. All right, let's talk about the Pelicans side here. Speaking of someone coming back, we know that CJ is going to be back from the lung injury that he had. How does that affect this Pelicans team overall? Can you do anything with them anymore? Because it doesn't feel like it.
I mean, he completely crosses out Daniels and Alvarado and Herbert Jones, most likely. Jordan Hawkins as well. With Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ healthy against this defense, I just have zero interest. And on top of that, CJ is going to do probably no less than 20 minutes of cardio. I can't imagine. So I don't know if you read this, and I hopefully I'm reporting it correctly, but while he is available to play today, I'm sure number one, he'll be on a minutes limit. And number two, the doctor that he had been working with kind of was telling him that he should be probably not playing as early as he is right now. This is the
Interesting.
second time that he's had a collapsed lung, by the way, in like 3 years. So
Yeah. I'm sure he kind of wants to get ramped up for the in-season tournament. I'm sure that has to
yeah, and
be
that's that part of it.
part of
Like they
this.
made the tournament. By the way, Sixers did not.
Yeah,
So there's
crazy.
that too.
Crazy how this in-season tournament stuff worked out. Pelicans and Kings is going to be very interesting. Um, I think that I don't really want much from either side here. I'm kind of fine with staying away from this game and watching from the sidelines unless we get any injury news that we need to react to.
Is there any viability? I know we already kind of just said Jonas and kind of just shit on him with the Embiid stuff, but if Valanciunas plays like 34 to 35 minutes, is that at least intriguing from a pick'em perspective?
You think Joe Val plays 34 to 35 minutes?
If he does not foul out in 25, I think he plays upwards of over 30.
I don't know if he does. They've been so willing to kind of say, forget about the center position, let's go small ball, and
Oh
it doesn't
Jesus!
matter
Well,
who they're
then
facing off
then
against.
Embiid's just gonna score 50,
No,
right?
I know.
So
I mean, like I've seen them do it before several times this season. Where even though there's a dominant big man on the other side, they're kind of like, we don't really care. We don't want Joe Val on the floor. So I don't know. I don't think you can bank on Joe Val getting minutes just because Embiid's there.
that's fair. I just kind of look, I'm not. We'll have to do more research on the Jovel stuff. That was fringe at best. You just had the minutes and correlation lined up for the Minnesota spot, which I guess was a little bit interesting to see that he performed so well there. And then Houston, same thing.
For sure. Anything else here? I honestly, if you want to talk about pick'em stuff, you can. But Optimizer doesn't like anything. I don't like anything. I'm perfectly fine with staying away.
I think this is just again high number, but conviction on a couple things. I mean, Joel Embiid is just in a phenomenal spot, so I know that this is going to be very close, and I'm sure it probably doesn't grade out the best. But 32 and a half points would be my lean there for him. I know it's a lot, but again, you don't get too many good spots like this every single day.
It's a really high number. I guarantee you the
Sure.
optimizer's not going to like it because it's a really high
Yep.
number. It doesn't
And
like really high
I mean,
numbers.
he's just right there, right? He's always right,
Yeah.
very, very close.
Does like points and rebounds over. I know it really likes his rebounds. Oh, it does like his points over, just barely, but has it at 34 as is projected. So I think he can get that points over pretty easily today, in my opinion. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this next game, Jared. If you're ready to move on to it.
Yeah, just one more thing here. I'd be very curious to see what Underdog puts Embiid's fantasy score at because he has cleared 60 in 4 straight games. So, and those are some tough matchups in there too. I would be willing to go ahead and say anything over 50 is a gimme.
58 and a half.
Okay.
That's
I mean,
really high. That's a
it is
really high
very high.
number.
It is also the easiest matchup that he's seen in the last 5 games.
Is it
So,
really?
yeah, Lakers, Thunder. Well, I guess I don't know. You can say whether or not
Wow.
that's good or not.
Yeah.
Did not play against Minnesota, Cleveland, Brooklyn.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you could say that. The spot's definitely solid. Don't get me wrong. It's just 58's a high number for sure. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about this next game, Jared. If you're ready to get into it.
Yep.
Next game up is going to be the Houston Rockets facing off against the Denver Nuggets. Currently, the Nuggets are 7.5 point favorites. Over under is at 215.5. Let's talk about this Rockets team first. Not very injured, very disappointing loss against Luka and the Dallas Mavericks last night. How do you think they rebound into this one? And I mean, tough matchup against Denver, but Denver's been showing a lot of holes recently. Like, there's certainly some guys that could pop off here, and I think Şengün could be one of those guys potentially, as he had a really good game against Denver last time too.
Yeah, Şengün's definitely on the list, and after that, it kind of just I don't know necessarily how great I feel about it. I have a take that I shared already, and this is kind of it jumped a half point a little bit, but I'm really on the under of this game. I think that there are a lot of factors working against Houston here. It's a tough heartbreaker. You were so close to making the in-season tournament, and you weren't able to beat Dallas on their home court, and you also lose the Texas rivalry. So they're on a traveling back-to-back, and they're about to go into the worst environment to play in. I guess if you consider some of the Houston or the Denver injuries, that makes things a little bit less of a worry. But you're going after getting eliminated from the in-season tournament. I guess we'll see how they feel, like how that makes them feel. But they're already a really slow-paced team. That is two of the slowest-paced teams in the league. Denver is a bottom 3 team, or Denver's a bottom 7 team. Houston's a bottom 3 team in pace, and both teams have had their over-unders, Josh. They are the third worst and the second worst in the league. So a lot of signs point to this being just a really just really gross game. So I would think that Şengün can thrive in that kind of situation. And I think that that's completely fine whether or not Joker's out there or not. Same thing kind of applies to like if Joker's going to play in this game and play 35 minutes, then Şengün's going to be out there for 35 plus minutes. So that spot is okay. And then it kind of just depends on whether you think that Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon are playing, because if they're not, then some matchups open up for Houston.
Yeah, all these guys are questionable. It's gonna, we'll get to the Nuggets side here relatively soon, but it's a tough conversation to, once you figure that out, this whole thing gets a lot easier. The problem is like the slate starts at 7 and this game
Yeah.
starts at 9, right? So like you're
Yeah.
most likely not getting all this Nuggets news before we end up locking everything in, and that makes it tough to get there. And like you said, like it's incredibly slow pace. Both of these teams are playing tremendous defense. Rockets are the best defensive team in the league right now. Like, are you even excited about this Nuggets team if some of these guys sit? I think the only guy I'd be excited in is Nikola Jokic, but I think the price tag is too high. From the feeling of what we've talked about so far, it doesn't feel like the value is there. So it doesn't feel like a 12K guy is necessarily worth it today. So I don't know, man. I'm most likely stay away from Denver here and Houston, honestly. Like I don't think there's a lot of great plays on Houston. I think I most likely end up trying to save with that center position rather than playing an 8K Şengün, though I think the play is still solid.
Yeah, I mean, I would gladly take Nurk in this spot over Şengün at the prices. Um, and things could get really ugly if even two of these guys are back for Denver here in terms of value. And the only spot that you're going to get value, which by the way, I don't think DeAndre Jordan is any more of a value today. They've just skyrocketed his price. So I think that is a cross off. And then Reggie Jackson, if Jamal Murray is not playing, he still gets a tough matchup. So it's like I don't really want to do anything with this. And Maybe we get some value with some Lakers at the beginning of the slate, but you're right. It's going to be a fair and balanced kind of day.
Yep, for sure. Anything else here in this game? If not, let's talk about pick'em a little bit.
I'm more on board of just fading this, regardless if Joker plays or not.
I would agree with that one. Let's talk about pick'em at least. I don't think there's much here. Optimizer really likes an FEV under here at assist. It's at 9 right now on both sites. It has them
Wow.
projected at 5.7, which is I could definitely see that happening. So with it being slower paced and everything, I think that he got 4 in this matchup last time he played as well. I'm not saying that necessarily one means the other, but I could definitely see him being under 9 here. I don't mind the play overall, but that's just a lean from the optimizer. Everything else is under the threshold that we usually go by, so not much else to really get excited about.
Yeah, there was a trend here. And again, I think that a lot of factors are working against this, but Jabari Smith has cleared points in 5 straight games. He's also cleared rebounds in 4 straight games. I just think that there's a lot to be. I think that the win kind of comes out of the sails for Houston today. They've been playing really well. Don't get me wrong, but I think that the second half of a back-to-back traveling to Denver is just not something that I'm super enticed with. But if Aaron Gordon does not play, I think those numbers can stay consistent.
That's the other thing is that like a lot of people don't talk about it. One of the hardest back-to-backs that you can have in the NBA is when you travel to Denver and then have to play in elevation. The only time it gets tougher is if you play in Utah first and then travel to Denver and have to play in elevation because
Yeah.
Utah also deals with that elevation factor. It's tough for these players, man. They usually get a little bit winded at the end of the game, and I think it's a tough game overall for Houston. So as much as I love this Houston Rockets team, which is a weird thing to say because I've been backing them since the beginning of the season, but usually not a Houston fan. I think they most likely lose here. I wouldn't mind -7.5 for this Nuggets team. I'm sure they've got to be fired up right now and ready to get back at it because they've been on a little bit of a skid
Yep.
outside of that Clippers game.
Hmm.
All right. Anything else here, Jared? If not, let's move on to the last one.
No, thankfully we get a really nice way to cap the slate off.
Yeah, for sure. Last game of the slate is going to be the Clippers facing off against the Kings. Currently, the Clippers are 2-point favorites in this one. Over under is set at 231. Let's start with this Clippers team who walk into a very good matchup where they're going to have a lot of spots where they can take advantage of. This Kings team, since Fox has returned from his injury, has been running at the 6th fastest pace in the NBA. I already highlighted this one in the Discord, Jared, but I really like Paul George tonight. He has consistently dominated against this poor Kings team, gotten over 50 FanDuel points in each of the last 4 matchups, has gotten over 46 FanDuel points in 6 out of the last 7 matchups against this team. He just likes playing against this team. And I think him specifically, after only scoring 6 points in that Nuggets game, has to be fired up to get back into it and redeem himself a little bit after that loss.
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic Paul George shooting guard against Sacramento situation. I know that that was a narrative that we've played on for a very long time, but it's historically proven, and also I feel like he's in a range where he makes more sense in terms of a roster construction. Maybe not so much on DraftKings, closer to 9K, but you get him in the mid eights on FanDuel, and it does feel like you can feel pretty consistent in taking a couple of your favorite 7, 8K guys and on that site and going from there. So I like Paul George. I can definitely get behind that. I think that this is a really big pace up spot for the Clippers, so you don't have to go there, but and I wouldn't suggest this. I wouldn't play Paul George and another star alongside of him, but I don't mind the spots for Kawhi or James Harden either. I think that they are fringe tournament plays, Paul George being the clear play here. But if this game stays as close as Vegas predicts it at a 2 point spread with a 230.5 total with the pace up spot here, it's pretty good for them.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind it. I think I'd lean a little bit more towards Kawhi, but I just because this team's having in Sacramento is having some front court issues with Keegan Murray being injured right
Mm-hmm.
now and also Alex Len being injured. They've been playing a lot of Trey Lyles, who just is an
Yeah, they have.
NBA level defender at this point in his career. Um, it's a spot where I think I think wings in general are just going to have really solid matchups against the Kings, and that belongs to Kawhi and Paul George today, most likely.
As this is kind of a transitionary point here, but we also are getting this Kings team on the second night of a back-to-back, coming off of an electric game last night where they were able to basically eliminate the Warriors from the in-season tournament, and they took their spot. So a huge game here, our game last night for the Kings, and I feel like they kind of have the opportunity to deflate a little bit here.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a spot where you could see this Kings team, such an emotion. We talk about it on the NFL level, how, teams have such emotional games, such hard fought games, and then usually disappoint a little bit the next week. You could definitely see that from the Kings tonight, where such an emotional game last night to make sure they got into the in season tournament. They did get into the in season tournament, and now things could definitely fall back down to earth a little bit. Anything you like from this Kings team? I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether Keegan Murray is going to play or not today, but regardless if he does or doesn't, I don't know, like Harrison Barnes is okay, but I don't think I'd get much interest outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, Harrison Barnes took a lot of shots last night. Didn't have the greatest output ever. I would tend to lean on like I'm not super thrilled about anything, and I would have said De'Aaron Fox is okay, but looking back, I just wanted to see how many minutes he played. He played 40 minutes last night, so I'm a little bit off of the Kings here.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move over to pick'em stuff, Jared. Anything you like from the pick'em side of things? I will say that Optimizer likes De'Aaron Fox under threes attempted. PrizePicks is the only site that has it. It's at 8.5. They have projected him at 5. The Optimizer has him projected at 5.27. So I don't know if I agree with the number being at 5. I do agree that the over or the under could definitely hit after a very intense night of basketball last night for him. Took
Yeah,
32 shots last night. That's insane. He's got
right.
to be
You're right.
he's got to be gassed right now.
That's
There's
what I'm
no
saying.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
40 minutes.
40
Crazy
minutes.
stuff there.
Yeah.
I could see this. Again, you take what Vegas has and you usually end up trusting that and put conviction on it. But I see this as a maybe not blowout territory, but I could see the Clippers winning by 15 plus, and the Kings just not being able to show up today.
I could get behind it actually. It's crazy to be in a spot where we're actually backing the Clippers, but it feels like a pretty solid spot here.
They're
Um,
actually on the come up a little bit. It's a little
I'll
bit.
say it. Gross.
It's a little bit. It's tough to say, obviously, after some of the games that they've been through. But the Clippers are starting to be a little bit more consistent.
Gross. 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 All right, let's talk about pick'em. Rest of pick'em stuff, Jared. Anything else you like here? If not, we can wrap this thing up and call it a day.
I think the only person that we should actually be discussing really is the George stuff. I mean, maybe Harden assists, but that's been pretty inconsistent as well. Um, but I think it is just Paul George here. So I like rebounds. I like points rebounds. I could get to a lot of things here with this spot.
39.5 for that fantasy score number. Sold.
Hmm.
100% sold.
Okay,
I'll buy into that before anything else.
that's definitely interesting considering where his price tags are at.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty in line with price tags, right? I guess a little bit undervalued, but,
A little
you
bit
know,
under.
you can kind of expect that. It seems like all of these projections are somewhat undervalued unless they're in like gleamingly good spots and then they're around value, but not much more you can expect there. All right, Jared, let's get out of here. Any other final thoughts before we wrap this thing up, man?
No, I think today's slate is pretty front loaded. And then you kind of just have to see where the Denver injuries are, but it does feel like a rest day for the Lakers. I know that we are, it's always very hit or miss in that front, but it does, like I said, feel like you're rostering a lot of the 7 p.m. window. Think that there are really strong plays in the middle of the slate with the Phoenix Toronto game and the Utah Memphis game, and then kind of tails off from there. So I guess a construction note: if we are very interested in the Paul George spot, like I know that you're bullish on, I'm very much right there with you. it does feel like you can play George, and then if something happens, you have some flexibility to pivot. But at the end of the day, you might not even have to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just goes back to something you mentioned earlier on the podcast. It definitely feels like a fair and balanced day. I just don't see the value that really opens up for you unless we get like massive injury. Unless Denver announces that like they're sitting all the questionable guys, like there's going to be little to no value today for you to
Yeah.
attack. And so you are truly, it's like 5K and above for almost every player. And it gets a little bit tough when you start talking about guys like Desmond Bain and Paul George, and you might have to make some decisions on, do you want Paul George and Desmond Bain, or do you want some Orlando Magic pieces against that really good defense? It feels like anyone above 10K is almost out of reach. Again, that's right now. And that's the great thing about this podcast. We do it a little bit earlier in the day. We get you guys the content for free, but behind the paywall, all those members get our reactions to all the injury news and how exactly we are handling things. So if you have the chance, go sign up. Only costs $1 right now. You can go to the link in Jared or I's bio and go sign up for that thing. But I think that's it, Jared. We ready to get out of here, man?
We are ready to go. I don't have any final thoughts. I think that we nailed it.
Yep, let's do it. Let's get out of here. All right. Thank you all for listening. And as always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.